Hi, and thank you for joining today's webinar. This is Building Basic Skills, Solutions for Sector Partners, and we are really thrilled to have you with us today. My name is Jim Torrance. I'm the Program Manager for the National Network of Sector Partners, which is an initiative of the Insight Center for Community Economic Development, and I will be your moderator today. I'm joined in our Oakland offices by Esther Polk, who's our Administrative Support Manager and is providing technical support to make sure everything runs as smoothly as possible. Thank you, Esther, for your help. We are thrilled to have as our panelist today Tom Du Bois, who's the Director of New Initiatives at Instituto del Progreso Latino in Chicago. And for those of you who aren't familiar with the amazing work that that organization and Tom do, here's some of the things that are background for what he'll share with us today. Tom has, in his 15 years at Instituto, started partnerships with the city colleges of Chicago to help limited English proficient Latino immigrants get into manufacturing and healthcare career track training. He's also developed the Instituto's Sector-Focused Center for Manufacturing, which some of you may have heard of, also known as Manufacturing Works. He manages Instituto's Health and Safety, or OSHA, training programs, and he recently successfully completed a Green Jobs Bridge program, applying some of the work from his experience in manufacturing and healthcare to the green jobs sector. Just as a personal background, Tom and I go back a ways, and particularly to, I think it was 2005, Tom, when I visited Instituto as part of the Sector Skills Academy and learned about manufacturing works then. And since then, I've really come to call upon Tom's expertise a lot, and now he's become a member of NNSP's advisory committee. So Tom is really extremely knowledgeable and unfailingly generous with his expertise. And Tom, I just want to thank you for being with us today.
Yeah, well, thank you, Jim. I'm certainly honored to have been asked, and look forward to the discussion and questions, with everyone as we go through this.
Great. Okay, we'll get to that in just a second. I first just want to run through a few logistical items. For those of you who have not been on one of our webinars before, you can close the control panel to get it out of your way by clicking on this little arrow up at the upper left of it. And it'll shrink to the side. If you need to get it back, you can click on it again and bring it back. There are two ways to listen in on this webinar, and if you can hear me right now, you are using one of them. Sort of by popular demand, we are streaming audio for the session over the internet as well as using the phone connections that we usually use. And everyone is in listen-only mode, and will remain that way for the session, so don't worry about your audio pin. But we do want to take questions and comments, and you can let me know about your questions in one of two ways. The best way, which I really ask you to do if you can, is to type your questions into the question pane. And if you send me that question, or send us that question, we will find a time to get to it at an appropriate spot in the discussion. And I would say the sooner you get those your question in, the better. Questions do tend to pile up, and that'll let us find the right time to ask it. So it's very important for us that this be an interactive session and really address the questions that you have, as well as comments that you want to make. So again, please use that questions pane to do that. There is a function that we'll use later at the very end of the session to raise your hand. And if you need to do that and don't want to type a question, you can do that. But I may be delayed in getting to you just because I'm going to be focused on talking with Tom. In other news, this session is being recorded, and links to the recording, slideshows, and materials that we mentioned during the conversation will be sent to everyone who registered after the webinar. So if you missed something, don't worry. You'll have access to those materials afterwards. and you can feel free to share those materials with others who might find them of interest. Also, I want to say that if you've attended other webinars of ours, we're going to do things a little differently today in response to feedback that we've gotten from past webinars. And we're going to try to have more conversation and less presentation. So we will still have some slides from both myself and from Tom, but we're going to try to get as quickly as possible into the conversation, and that's where your questions really will be beneficial as well. At the end of the session, we really will want to hear back from you about how it went, and also how we can continue to improve. So after the session, I hope you'll take just 30 seconds or less to tell us about your experience in the evaluation window that pops up. And of course, you can always email me your feedback as well. A few words about the Insight Center and NNSP and why we care about this subject. The Insight Center, which is the parent organization of the National Network of Sector Partners, is an organization that's broadly committed to helping low-income communities become and remain economically secure. And we research and pilot a wide range of economic development strategies for low-income communities. We were among the first organizations in the country to identify the sector approach as effective and to begin to describe that and promote it nationally. And NNSP is the National Association for those who believe in the sector approach or who support sector initiatives. So I want to say this webinar is made possible by support from the Charles Stewart Mott Foundation, which has really been a driver of the sector movement and a champion of the sector approach and a longtime supporter of ours, and was developed in particular through some work that we're doing with organizations in the Mid-South states, but should be applicable to folks across the United States and elsewhere. This is the second in a series of webinars we're developing through that project, and I'll tell you a little bit more about the one coming up on November 28th at the end of our session. I mentioned that NNSP is the National Association for Sector Initiatives and their supporters, and if you're not sure of what a sector initiative is, here's a brief definition. I think some of the important elements to recognize are that sector initiatives are industry-focused and really build on deep knowledge of particular industries and connections with multiple employers within those industries. And I think we'll find that Instituto is a great exemplar of that, and that having that industry focus is really essential for being able to effectively contextualize basic skills education and make connections and create bridge programs that help people advance within an industry. It also relies on the role of a workforce intermediary and really treats both the industries, employers, and job seekers within the industry as dual customers, both of whose needs need to be met, as well as with a strong emphasis on changing how things are done in the labor market or in the workforce system. And we'll hear about some systems change that Instituto has made in creating these bridge programs. So, the main question is, why is this important to sector initiatives, this topic today of basic skills gaps? I think if you have ever been in a position to refer clients to job training only to find that they didn't qualify for career pathways training, you've had an experience of why the basic skills gap can affect you and your clients. Likewise, manufacturers who are looking for skilled employees have complained about the lack of the qualifications of the employees, and we'll want to hear from Tom about how this basic skills gap translates into what manufacturers say about what they need. The big picture is that even though it's a time of high unemployment, in the long term we expect to have worker shortages with the aging overall of the population, and that there won't be enough workers to meet the projected need, especially as skills needs increase. And so it's imperative not only to prepare new workers coming into the field, but also to increase the skills of existing workers, people who might be working at in lower skilled positions, and to help them advance to middle skilled jobs. So I know that this is an issue that comes up regularly because I hear it from sector initiatives across our network. It was flagged as one of the top issues by sector initiatives and their supporters in the Mid-South region whom we consulted. And I'm very excited to be able to talk with Tom about what they're doing that could be a model for others around the country. So with all that said, let's turn to Tom. And while we have our conversation, please do remember to send in questions, and we'll take them as they go along. But Tom, maybe just to start, you can talk a little bit about Instituto del Progreso Latino, what Instituto is and does, your mission, who you serve, and the kinds of services that you provide to your community.
Sure. Thanks, Jim. Yeah, just to provide a little context for the discussion, I guess. I've been very happy to have been part of Instituto for the past 15 years, as you mentioned, Jim. But the organization was formed 37 years ago, and it was actually in large part due to a recognition by community leaders of a skills gap, that a large part of the Latino population that they were working with could not access good jobs at the post office and other employers. And it really was important for a Latino population to be able to learn English for work. So it was out of that they really began to work on teaching English initially in church basements, and then was able to develop more as we go along, to the point today where there's programs in three basic areas. Number one, adult education, continuing and focus on English as a second language, and GED in Spanish, in English, as well as Spanish literacy and a large citizenship program. The second area is youth programs. We now operate 2 charter schools, one of them a healthcare charter, which was really an outgrowth of our work, in our adult career pathway in healthcare, and then also different in-school and out-of-school programs for youth. And then the third area is the workforce program. So Jim mentioned the sector center known as Manufacturing Works, which in NSP was very important in playing a role in developing that concept initially, with the city and with people like ourselves, so that it became something that our workforce board supported and put out an RFP that we were then successful in being awarded the contract to do. And of course our various education and training programs, as you'll hear more about as we go along. So that's Instituto in a nutshell. So we go on to the look at a couple of these different sectors in a little more detail, I think, if we can move down.
Okay. Sorry, Tom, I lost our...
Sure.
There we are. There we are.
Yeah.
This is what happens when you put technical things in the hands of lay people like myself. So thanks for the background. I mean, I think one of the things that would be helpful to understand is the way that the basic skills development, or the need that basic skills development within the community that Instituto serves has shown itself. What's the basic skills need that you're facing or have faced historically?
Yes, well, obviously the primary area of need is within English language proficiency, but we've also discovered, a significant need in other basic skill areas such as math and computer skills. In terms of the healthcare sector, for example, employers had identified a large need for bilingual healthcare professionals given the large and expanding Latino population. But as you can see from this slide, the representation of Latinos in these occupations was almost non-existent. And so reasons behind this has indicated low literacy levels, low English proficiency, personal and family employment barriers, et cetera. In the manufacturing area, a little, similar in some respects. If we want to go on to manufacturing. Yeah. Yeah, in this case, there's a large demand for people to fill, all of these higher skills now, more advanced manufacturing kinds of positions. And at the same time, there is a talent pool available, as the National Association of Manufacturing points out, but they lack adequate English language skills. So there's people that have good work experience, but typically it's been in lower skill kinds of positions. Many times they did not need to speak any English on the shop floor. Lots of places that Spanish was the language of on the shop floor, or in other cases Polish was the language, or sometimes one shift was Polish and one Spanish. So, but most of that has changed now. A lot of those were in very low skill kinds of low road types of production facilities, which are largely no longer around. And so the individuals that work there, they definitely have, good work habits, a good knowledge of basic manufacturing, but they don't have a knowledge of basic English. And of course, those jobs now also require higher levels of math and computer skills. So
Tom, are you saying that these are primarily Latino workers working in lower skilled manufacturing jobs, which are kind of the jobs in manufacturing that have been going away, and those folks find themselves needing to transition to higher skilled jobs, but they're facing this barrier of basic skills?
Exactly.
Overall,
some of them, there are people, even working, but they have difficulty being able to move up into any kind of really job that pays better, because they really need the English skills to be able to do that.
So they haven't been laid off yet, or
well, we have large numbers that are laid off, but there's still other people that aren't laid off, but they're just stuck.
Mm-hmm. And in healthcare too, it was part of the genesis of your work, hearing from folks in your community that they wanted to work in healthcare, but that they couldn't gain access either to the jobs or the training programs.
Yes, exactly. In fact, we would have people laid off from manufacturing coming in, and some of the women in particular, and saying, well, we'd really rather be able to go into a program for healthcare because, we actually had a background in nursing in our home country.
Mm-hmm.
So there were people that were already nurses that were coming here, but because of the language problems, they would be able to get a low-skilled job in manufacturing, but were not able to really pursue their career. So that really helped lead us to think about, we really do need some other opportunities for people. And then with National Council of La Raza's assistance, we did more of a study to look at other opportunities, and healthcare just was, something we concluded was definitely an area we needed to work in. And that's when we discovered the community college program, right in the middle of a Latino community, but unable for different reasons to be able to serve much of that community in terms of access for people into their, particularly into the LPN program that they had.
So they were turning
but there was an
away.
administrator that wanted to change that, so she became our champion. She really did want to put the community into community college. And
I like that. Put the community into community college, especially if they're based in a community and they're having to turn away people who live in the surrounding areas. I could see why they would have an interest in helping to create bridges. let me ask you about one other area of your work. I know you recently had a Green Jobs Bridge program that I understood was quite successful. What was the need as far as participants or people in the community for that kind of bridge?
Sure. Well, on a previous project, you know, there was going to be a development of a shopping center in the community. You know, we did some community meetings, and you know, I became very aware of a large pool of individuals in the community that had great construction skills. Some of them were in the unions, some of them were not, but typically they also lacked the language skills that would allow them to really broaden their employment opportunities. And so when the opportunity came along, again through National Council La Raza, to access this, you know, Department of Labor grant opportunity, you know, we said, well, maybe we can work with some of the individuals in this, you know, skill pool that's not working, and you know, be able to, you know, facilitate them raising their level of English and math and computer skills to be able to go into a community college program within the Green Jobs area. It's a building energy efficiency program. So we put, I think it's about 60 people into college that would not have gone into college otherwise, you know, as a result of the bridge program that we had.
And they needed that because even though they had these construction skills, their options were limited by these other basic skills gaps that you were describing, such as English proficiency, but also including literacy and math.
Exactly.
Okay.
Well, now we've got some great success stories. I had people that are, you know, got their building operator certificates and are able to be building engineers, for example. Are there carpenters that have now, you know, a lot more knowledge of weatherization, and you know, they just have additional tools to make them more employable.
Do you have any idea what a building operator makes in terms of a wage? I'm assuming it's a step up from the previous work.
Definitely, yeah. And we have a large new building ourselves, and which then the organization hired one of our graduates to operate.
Oh, that's great. You know, let me ask you just on the employer side and what you've heard from employers about the impact of basic skills gaps. I mean, it's fairly clear here that manufacturing employers, and we hear this a lot, are facing a skills gap. And I think underlying the idea that there are too few skilled candidates for existing jobs is the idea that people in some ways are prevented from gaining access to those jobs by barriers in their basic skills. Do you hear that from manufacturers? Are they aware of a basic skills gap, or are they just aware of a we can't find the people we need gap?
No, they're definitely aware of the basic skills gap. Many of them give tests. You know, the better employers have math tests or some kind of CNC test, for example, you know, for their computer numerical control machining. And so they see a lot of people not pass those tests. And sometimes they end up coming to our program then as a result when they discover that, yeah, they're going to need to increase their skill level to be able to access the better jobs that are out there. So I know in this Crane's Chicago article, they quoted one manufacturer saying, it's not a skills gap, it's a skills chasm. You know, just like a huge, you know, difference between the level of skills that people have versus what they need. So
that's a phrase I hadn't heard before, skills chasm. It adds a level of urgency to addressing the problem.
Right.
You know, we've gotten some questions, and I want to thank everyone who is submitting questions. Please keep it up. You know, first on a very nuts and bolts level, Lysan Cito asks, will the slides be available after the call? And I want to assure you that yes, we will email everyone who registered for this session with links to the slideshow, this recording, and to other materials that we reference. So, so thank you for reminding me to remind you all that that will be coming. I also got a question, Tom, for you from Conrad Lawrence, and thank you, Conrad, for the question, which has to do with whether this skills gap issue just applies to the Latino community, or if you're finding that there's a general skills gap that affects low-income communities and maybe beyond low-income communities more broadly. I wonder from your perspective what you're finding, and I can comment on this as well.
Sure. Since we operate the Manufacturing Sector Center, it's you know, encompasses a broad geographic area of the city and the surrounding county, and so we do you know, we have a large flow of people coming in. It's a very you know, broad based you know, representing the entire city and county. So and from the assessments that are done, you know, we definitely find you know, there are levels of low literacy as opposed just to limited English. And of course, some of the people with limited English also are, you know, low literacy. You know, they're low in literacy in their own language. So our classes, when we get to the mid-level, which we'll talk about in a minute, you know, our classes are about 50-50 now, Latino, African American, and so.
Okay. So you're finding that there's breadth to the basic skills problem. It goes beyond English proficiency, and it impacts other kinds of literacy and math skills.
Yeah, and definitely, and of course some of it has to do with the inadequacies of our public school system in terms of being able
you know
to. Yeah.
I will want to ask you a little bit later about the healthcare focused high school that you mentioned earlier. Before getting to that, I will say we have another question just about Instituto, and maybe you can talk about this generally, and then maybe later you can talk about how specific programs are funded. But Beth Blanchard asks how Instituto is funded overall, and I don't know if you want to just sort of briefly talk about Instituto's support.
Wow, yeah. Well, for one thing, we've been constantly growing. When I started, we were a budget of about $500,000 and a staff of 8 or 9 of us, and now the budget's well over $10 million and a staff of a little over 200. So there's been a lot to support as we go along in just developing new programs and getting them supported and funded. And I think the funding, you know, ranges, you know, obviously a lot of the government sources from local city government to the state government to federal grants that we've been able to now increasingly access directly, are working through other organizations. And then the charter schools, of course, are all supported through the public school system and contracts that we have there. So that's become a big part of the budget. And as we're able to demonstrate success, you know, we've been successful in accessing some of the private foundation dollars, which are critical. Anybody that operates an organization, you know, the value of unrestricted revenue, and so those kind of sources have been very important. So that's, I guess, just a brief.
Well, it sounds like a range of different kinds of support. Out of your overall $10 million budget, about how much of that is the workforce area? Do you have a sense?
Well, for adult workforce, I'd say probably about a third of it.
Okay. Okay. Well, so that's both a sense of the resources that you're working with, but also the fundraising challenge that I'm sure you confront more or less.
Yeah, we do also have regular fundraisers like most people, right?
Yep. Well, I have some additional questions. We're gonna hang on to these, and some of them are relevant to some of what you're going to talk about in a moment. Before we move on to talk about your bridge programs, I do want to just step back and share a little bit about what we hear about what's working and what's not working for addressing the issue that both the employers and the participants or the communities that we are focused on experience. And you know, I think on one hand, there are some strategies still in wide use that sector initiatives in particular are finding less effective or less well-suited to their goals of helping people enter into and advance along career pathways. And so, you know, we might say that basic skills training that is low intensity or not linked to career goals, you know, not taken in the context of a clear career goal that is supported with navigation assistance or in a program that does not lead perhaps to a specific next step, or that is not offered in conjunction with career training and is offered in a way that's sort of generic or not contextualized. You know, what we've heard is that those tend to be less effective for sector initiatives than some of the other strategies. And I just want to check with you, Tom, whether that fits with your own experience, how you see this question about some strategies that are out there that maybe aren't having the desired effect or aren't maybe proving effective for the communities that Instituto focuses on.
Sure. I know early on when we were starting this, Dr. Davis Jenkins, I think I consider it kind of the father of career pathways in a lot of the analysis and work that he did. Part of the analysis was of the traditional adult education programs, and he really identified that there was extremely little connection of the adult education students into any kind of credit or vocational programming. And so I think I heard somebody say, we don't want to refer people into adult education hell and then never return, you know. But that's the way it was. In Chicago, we had 30,000 students in ESL programs, and almost none of them would ever essentially make it out into the college itself. So big issue, big problem, I think, big lost opportunity for individuals as well as employers and the college themselves. So you heard the term silos sometimes, that these programs were in their own silo, that they were in and of themselves and just not making the connections. And so I know at a conference I attended last week in Rhode Island, I heard one of the gentlemen that's in charge of the IBEST program in the state of Washington, and he said now there's a real revolution in the ESL classrooms, you know, totally changing, and big part of the change now is to make that connection, you know, for individuals to have that ability to access and connect with, you know, the regular college career programs in particular.
Well, what you say, Tom, really resonates with some of what we've heard from other organizations around the country. There's an organization in North Carolina, MDC Inc., that had an initiative called Latino Pathways, which really arose out of the same kind of analysis of what happened to particularly limited English proficient Latinos who went into generic, siloed developmental ed courses in their community colleges. And as you said, I think they looked at, out of 4,000 English language learners who went into those courses, you know, a handful, like double digits, ever made it into career pathways related training.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
So the numbers are very stark. I think Seattle Jobs Initiative has done some analysis in Washington on the topic as well. You know, some of the strategies that folks are using, sector initiatives in particular, are piloting and using around the country, include bridge and career pathway programs, which we're going to, you know, hear more detail about, you know, your approach to in a moment. Integrated learning, like the IBEST model, in which you even might have co-instruction between technical skills instructors and basic skills instructors in the same classroom, or integrated curricula that are offered in parallel, such as some of what we did when I was at JVS in San Francisco. Supplemental learning, so you know, either support for participants who are facing basic skills gap through parallel courses that aren't necessarily integrated in terms of their content, but that are tailored to meet the needs of participants in particular career track training, or academic assistance, tutoring, other kinds of learning support. There's a lot of work being done on work-based learning models for entry-level employees, and the Jobs to Career model for health, or the Jobs to Careers initiative for frontline healthcare employees has a lot of examples of successful programs that are helping people address basic skills gaps and advance in their healthcare careers. Accelerated learning, which often compresses and goes from a very low intensity approach to something that is both more targeted, contextualized, and also focused on a clear next step, but then also is more intense. You know, meeting a couple of days a week for a couple of hours is maybe not the most effective way to improve your English proficiency or other basic skills, and accelerated learning addresses that. And then I think we've seen more pipeline programs which are, for example, starting with younger people and helping them build their basic skills and academic skills in the context of a particular industry or career path, such as the healthcare academy or high school that you were just describing. So those are some of what we hear around the country as effective methods. Maybe, Tom, we could dig into your career pathways bridge programs to sort of explore that a bit more.
Sure,
and
I'd be happy to.
And one of the things that I really have admired and respected about your work there at Instituto is some of your precision around your terminology. I know you have a very precise meaning for a career pathway and also for a bridge program. Do you want to just start by describing what you mean by each of those terms, and then maybe you can tell us about the manufacturing career pathway and how it works?
Sure, thanks. Well, in the state of Illinois, there's an official definition of bridge programs from our Illinois Community College Board and also the Illinois Department of Commerce and Economic Opportunity, where they define bridge programs as programs that prepare adults with limited academic and/or English skills to enter and succeed in credit-bearing post-secondary education and training, leading to career path employment in high-demand, middle, and high-skilled occupations. Got all that? The idea of working with adults, limited skills, entering and succeeding in the post-secondary education. And that the goal of these programs is to bridge that gap between the existing skills of the individual and what they need to enter and succeed in post-secondary education and career path employment. So it's a bridge both into education and into career path employment. So that's the official definition that we contributed to and go by. A pathway, on the other hand, typically connects bridges, and that's what we'll illustrate here. But again, the definition of career pathway, a series of connected education and training programs and support services that enable individuals to secure employment within a specific industry or occupational sector and to advance over time to successfully higher levels of education and employment in that sector.
Mm-hmm.
So
Okay.
pathways, connecting bridges basically is how we look at it. And so we have that set up within manufacturing, where we have a lower level bridge, where we have our vocational English as a second language, our vessel programs, both an A and a B is a different level, A being an assessment of about a 4th to 6th grade levels measured on a TABE test, and then the B level being 6th to 8th grade level, and that then being entry into what we call our production technician bridge program, which itself then prepares people for entry into the community college advanced certificate programs. So it's a lower level bridge of people with limited English going into production technician bridge, people that are less than secondary levels, and then bridging them and supporting them to be able to make that transition into the college program, and leading to an associate degree if they like. Also, the vocational ESL can lead people into the industrial maintenance bridge program and into a certificate program in that area also. So that's the kind of illustration of bridge and pathway.
So let me see if I understand part of the framework. The first part strikes me that there's an assessment process, and you mentioned TABE and different levels, that in some ways determines at what level people come in, depending on their level of basic skills. So I wonder, is that right? And are there other things that also affect that that decision? There were quite a few questions about different forms of assessment and how you assess participants' basic skill levels in the questions that were submitted before this webinar through the registration process.
And that's an important discussion, and I'm definitely not the expert on different forms of assessment, but we know there's some weaknesses in the instrument that we use, but it's pretty much standard in the workforce system, so we need to use that TABE test as the assessment tool. The beauty of this pathway system, in a sense, is that all doors are open, right? We don't have to really turn people away. I mean, even if they're assessed at below a 4th grade level, we have internally, our adult education department with the lower level English as a second language, and if they're higher level, if they're 12th grade or if they're already college ready, then we can just refer them directly into the college. But
Tom, is part of the thinking that below a certain level, a contextualization needs to wait?
Well, below a 4th grade level, it's really just the basic techniques of language acquisition, I guess, of it's just the beginning English. So it's more at a mid-level English where the discussion's more about applications for work and for specific sectors begins to make sense, I think, to people.
So based on that assessment, who does what as far as these different elements of the bridge and the career pathways training? Are you the one offering training? Are you partnering with others to deliver the training? How does that work?
Yeah, yes, we have a very strong partnership model. We do as I mentioned, Institute for 37 years has done English language instruction, and so we felt competent to be able to do that part of it and just link it into the technical part. At the bridge level, we're doing what, if you use the language that Pathways came out of, which is from the tech prep days, we talk about applied academics and technical specialty. So the applied academics are courses in English, math, and computers, which we do, and then the technical specialty is the computer numerical control machining, which then our students go to the college for the excellent machine shop that they have, actually two different colleges that we utilize. And then, of course, as they go to the advanced certificate, that's a college. We provide, all we'll talk more about the kind of wraparound services. We're the ones that have the contract with the Workforce Investment Act system in Chicago that's able to fund a lot of it, and we use, then when our students are ready to go into the advanced certificate program, they can, we can obtain individual training account voucher to pay for that, pay for whatever training that the financial aid Pell Grants do not pay for. So then the college has Perkins funding that pays for all of the equipment, for example, and related services. So we don't have to worry about the maintenance of $1 million worth of machine tools.
Right. You're building on what you each have the capacity for and are in some ways expert at. Does delivering the vessel and even the production technician bridge yourselves allow you greater flexibility to customize it the way you want to?
Sure. I mean, anything that we have more control over is helpful for us to fine-tune and improve as we go along. But we have an excellent relationship with the college as well. Our Manufacturing Works division, for example, can come to the college or bring an employer to the college and saying, well, here's a bunch of CNC jobs that are open, but they really need to have a little more work in X. And so the instructor can focus maybe toward the end of the course a little bit more in that particular, use of some type of gauge or something that, they would not commonly use. So, I think there's flexibility as well with the community college, and it's all important that we have the communication between us to do it.
So I have a question from Grant Anderson. And thank you, Grant, for submitting this. And I think it has to do with the array of potential partners or providers of basic skills courses. And the question was, how do we contribute or solve this as a social service organization involved in sector initiatives? There seem to be lots of ESL-type course offerings out there already. I wonder, first of all, I mean, what's different from what you're doing compared to those other ESL offerings out there? How should those offerings be held in relation to what you all do, or should they be changing the way they're doing business? That might be too much of a question for you. I don't know. Are you aware of other initiatives out there, I mean, ESL offerings out there that are either serving other communities or serving them in a different way, and how do they fit?
Well, of course, every community college generally has a ESL program. In the state of Illinois now, they are required to connect those programs to their vocational training and credit offerings, and so they're all now developing their own bridge programs. So I think we've been a good model for that. Again, the key thing is I think being connected together. So hopefully, I think it's really become a big national push now for that to happen. It's a big change in the world of adult education.
Well, it sounds like you see some movement on that.
Sure. It's huge, and it's top down. We heard the director of the Office of Vocational and Adult Education last week, which is part of the Department of Education, talk about the value that they place on bridge programs. And they have some new publications out to support that, and they view it as a strategy to support the president's initiative and goal which is that every American complete at least 1 year of post-secondary higher education or career training.
Mm-hmm.
So,
right.
So it really has become a national goal, and of course it's based off of the whole analysis of the changing nature of work that, higher skills are in demand and that require generally some post-secondary education and some industry-recognized credentials.
Okay. Tom, you mentioned something else in talking about the way that you have a strong partnership model with others, including the workforce board. And I'm wondering, I'm wondering about the importance of the context of those wraparound services that you mentioned, academic support or other kinds of support services or the counseling and case management. Is that consistent across your programs, and is that a big part of this model too?
Yes, definitely. I think it's something that unfortunately doesn't get the attention it needs in the community college system. The idea that people really do need the support as they move through an education system in terms of counseling, in terms of supporting services such as bus passes and gas cards, to for low-income individuals to be able to get back and forth to classes, and then in terms of actually connecting people as they move through the program to employment, provide the job placement assistance, job readiness training, et cetera. So all those are incorporated in what we try to do, which we could talk about, I guess, in terms of the healthcare pathway, which we have called Carreras and Salud. If you want me to talk about that for a minute.
Well, I was just thinking maybe we don't need to go into it in as much detail, although just,
of course, yeah.
It looks to me as if the principles are similar in that you can be assessed and enter at multiple points. And I really liked the phrase that you used a moment ago. What was the phrase? All doors are open. I liked that phrase a lot to describe the value of having a career pathway like this. So, if there's anything significantly different other than the actual steps along the way, maybe you can highlight those.
Well, just one thing I didn't mention, but it's very clear in the healthcare area, is that by giving people this picture, this map, if you will, they're able to have a vision of what's possible. That they're not coming into the program to be necessarily just to be a CNA. They're coming in to be a nurse, right? Mm-hmm. And they can see a clear pathway of what they need to take along the way, whatever point that they start, with multiple points of entry and exit. They can see they can move from the certified nursing assistant into the pre-LPN level, getting them ready to go into college and take the prerequisites that are required to go into the LPN program. And they can learn from the orientation, that they can achieve much higher level of income if they're able to, continue and persist through this pathway, into the post-secondary level, LPN and RN. Tremendous, dramatic increases in income, as individuals are able to obtain those certifications.
Being able to see the pathway and the full pathway, and thinking about your participation even at the entry-level bridge as part of a whole pathway rather than as an isolated course or offering of its own, really makes a difference in terms of the motivation and success of your participants. Is that exactly what you're saying?
Exactly. Yeah.
What about the outcomes? What outcomes have you seen, and what do you keep track of as far as whether you're being successful or not?
Sure. Well, the as we said, the goal of any bridge program is to bridge individuals into both employment and advanced training at the post-secondary level. So for the manufacturing program, the past 3 years we had a total of 94 enrollments, and 87 of those achieved one and or the other goal. You know, they either obtained employment or they obtained entry into the advanced certificate program. So it's a 93% attainment. You know, we also measure the learning gains as they go through. So we see that yes, they are increasing their levels of you know, basic skills as they go along, and you know, so we pre and post test the individuals as they move through. And of course, the careers program's been on a larger scale. It puts, I think, since 2005, says 1,200 students have enrolled in Careers in Salute, and you know, at the different levels. Over 270 have completed the program and attained their LPN. 200 others completed now at a CNA level. Over 40 have completed at an associate RN program. So it's gone up in scale, you know, with some of the increased resources that our career pathway in healthcare was able to access.
You know, we did get a question from, again, from Grant Anderson. Thank you, Grant, about whether your board includes former participants, or what other ways you get feedback about the program and how successful it is for participants. Sounds like you're tracking outcomes and really making adjustments to improve outcomes. What are you hearing back from participants?
Sure. Obviously, under any Workforce Investment Act funded program, you know, we need to maintain contact with our graduates for at least a year after they leave. So that's a good opportunity to get the feedback, you know, about you know, what else would have been good for them to have learned, and how it's going on, you know, at their job, et cetera. And of course, we get feedback from employers as well, both individually and collectively, you know, through advisory councils with each program that we do with the college.
So that's a formal structure for getting employer feedback. There's advisory councils. And is there a formal way you get feedback from participants, or is it because you're in constant contact with them day in and day out, after placement, before placement, during training, and so on, that you get?
That's true. It'd be good if we had, I think, a more formal process. But yeah, we do get it, and of course, I try to spend a lot of my time just going to classes and talking to students and getting the feedback as they're going through, you know. So.
Okay. Yeah. So there's another question that we got from someone at King Associates, and it has to do with, and I think you sort of touched on this, to what extent is moving participants into those credit-bearing college programs an objective of your programs? And what happens if people don't test in, or how do you make it so that if they go through a bridge, they are, you know, gonna make it into the program? Do you ever face a problem where people complete the bridge but aren't able to test into those programs?
Sure. And where our biggest challenge, if you will, comes from is with individuals that start at the lower level. Individuals that start at the bridge level, if you will, that's immediate before going into college, they're usually, you know, higher level to begin with, right? So we have a lot better success rate, I guess, with those individuals being able to pass the entrance exam for the college and to continue. They also tend to be more likely to have their high school diploma at the time. So it's really the students starting at the lower level bridge that's more of a challenge. And so it just requires a lot more tutoring that we provide, a lot more counseling, work with them on filling out the financial aid forms and doing the FAFSA, all of those kind of college transition services that are important. But
right.
But still, there's individuals that either choose not to go on or are not able to pass the college entrance exam at the level necessary. So we're still working with those individuals to obtain employment. And bear in mind, they've already gotten a certain level of specific training. In the case of manufacturing, the computer numerical control operations at the bridge level. So they're very employable. And some companies actually rather hire them at that level and then train them on their own CNC operations and programming, rather than people with the advanced certificate, where they do get the experience on the programming level of machines. So,
well, you just touched
we make a very strong effort to definitely provide the placement assistance and get people employed that, at whatever level they end up at.
Okay. I mean, you just touched on one of the questions we received earlier from Larry Korn. Thank you, Larry, for sending this, which had to do with the value of on-the-job training as part of the solution to the skills gap. Were you saying just now that some employers prefer to hire people even at a lower skill level and train them on the job, perhaps with support from OJT funding? And how does that?
That's exactly right. Yeah, and our manufacturing sector center is able to provide that OJT dollars on the job training contracts, and so we have set up internships programs. And they're definitely very helpful to particularly for individuals that lack previous manufacturing experience. It's a big advantage, obviously, for people to be hired in manufacturing if they've already worked in manufacturing, but it's not always the case. We do have really excellent individuals coming through that don't have that experience. So by doing the internship, being able to offer the employer the OJT dollars, it helps encourage the employer then to bring on people that might lack the actual work experience, or they might not be at the advanced certificate level.
Well, okay. So, Tom, thanks. I want to say to you out there that thank you for these questions that are rolling in. I do want to get to hearing a little bit about Instituto's approach to contextualization and how they go about contextualizing the instruction in these bridge programs. But please keep the questions coming, and we will have time at the end to catch up with questions that haven't been asked yet. Tom, there was one other question, well, two other questions that before we move on that I will flag. One was just, you talked about an assessment test. Ronald York asks, what was the name of the computerized test you spoke of earlier? I don't know whether that's the TABE or that's the test of adult basic education, right? Or whether it's the CNC computer numerical control testing that some employers ask or give to potential hires. Are those the assessment tools that you've mentioned so far?
Yes, but the test that the college gives is a computerized test called the Compass exam.
Oh, okay.
Our community college uses, and so and it includes a writing component on the computer. It's then computer graded. So your basic skills instruction has to include also preparation for taking this test on the computer as well, I suppose. Exactly. And that's a good lead into the contextualization part, because there really are just as there's two goals in terms of outcomes, there's two goals in terms of contextualizing the curriculum. One is to prepare students for post-secondary education, not only to enter but to succeed, and the other being the employment goal, right? To prepare them, for jobs within the particular career path that they're in. So,
so you, Tom,
so
are you referring to,
hmm?
Yeah, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah, just the slide that you have up there. So contextualize with materials drawn from both the technical course and the workplace. So the technical course being the next level that they would move into.
Okay, so it's a combination of both those things. And so when you are contextualizing, it looks as if you're both bringing in materials from the course that they're going to need to succeed in, as well as the workplace that they're going to need to succeed in.
That's right.
Okay. Well, maybe you can tell us a little bit about Instituto's approach to contextualizing curricula, and both in maybe first just in general, how you all think about it.
Sure. Well, I mean, the concept, of course, is to link learning to earning. And the question becomes, at what level of context do you use it at a particular level of English? And so the traditional ESL classes, since they're not linked to earning, they're not linked to the workplace, their context is different. It might be survival skills, for example, something like that. But we found it very motivational for students when they understand the reason they're learning this is so that they, can get a better job. So when we start with students that are at a lower level of English, such as in our vocational ESL level A, the 4th through the 6th grade intake test, we use what's referred to here as a macro context. It's general, but it's still general focused on a particular sector, so it's using the terminology within that sector, without concentrating on a particular profession. And then as they move up, their level of English, they're able to handle, more complex vocabulary and grammatical structures, et cetera, so it becomes possible then to use, more complex curriculum, reading passages on a particular profession within the industry, such as the CNC operator and programmer, or in healthcare, in particular areas with nursing and medical terminology, et cetera. So that's kind of our general approach to the level of context.
And Tom, if I go back to this slide about, either the healthcare career pathway or the manufacturing career pathway, in both of those cases, it looks as if there are two levels of ESL. Is the first one of these the macro context, and then the next one?
That's correct. Mm-hmm.
So that's how it breaks down. And you mentioned that there are other more general ESL programs for those that are even below the thresholds that you have here that folks can participate in at Instituto.
That's correct. Yeah.
All right. I just want to make sure I'm listening properly.
Right.
Well, maybe you can talk about the process for contextualizing either the macro context courses or the micro context, or both. I think you've outlined a lot of specifics that people will want to hear about. Just how do you go about it?
Sure. Well, people can read through this slide if you want to in terms of the kind of technical process which the instructor develops an outline of the context knowledge expected by the student at the end of the class, and works with the skill instructor in terms of that content, and agree on assessment tools, activities, resources needed, et cetera, submitting the curriculum outline to the advisory council for feedback. What I want to say is, just beyond this, it's important. Sometimes yeah, to support the instructor if the instructor is the one doing it, and instructors generally are the right person. We have a lead instructor that's really excellent at doing this. It's important to collect the information that's needed, for the outline of the contextual knowledge, and so not just for the instructor to meet with the technical person doing the technical training, but also to get out into the world of work and look at companies, visit companies where our graduates are being hired at, and collect a lot of the material that's going to, they're going to need to be able to read. Instructional material, health and safety material, what kind of reports will they need to be able to write, what kind of, to what extent do they be able to do a lot of this on a computer, to be able to get instructions, to be able to give back information. So that's extremely valuable information to then incorporate into activities, within the classroom and content within the classroom. And of course, to do this within, formulating the learning goals in terms of employment, as well as passing the exam for the next level, and from the goals, developing the learning activities and objectives, the real-world learning tasks, and of course to ensure the right level, like we talked about, moving from a more general to a more specific context.
Tom, you were just saying, I think that not only the technical skills instructor, but also the ESL instructor needs to be out there in the world, or to integrate these real-world, industry-specific.
Yes, yes, especially the English language instructor, I think. Well, a technical instructor as well, but they're looking at different things.
Right. Do you find that requires a shift in approach, that most ESL instructors are, they need to be coached on changing this way of doing things, or doing things differently?
Sure, and we need to provide the instructors the ability and access to those companies to do it. I've heard of some programs, I forget where exactly, where they set up structured learning experiences for instructors to go to companies.
So that the instructors have
to,
they have time to do that.
Right, they're provided the paid time, I guess, to, as part of their professional development, really, to be able to spend some time on the shop floor to see what their graduates are going to experience, right, and to be able to fine-tune what they're doing so they can their graduates can better succeed in, in those positions.
Is that something that you do, or do you find other ways to support instructors to do that?
No, our lead instructor, at least, we work with him to, get out to some of the companies. We also will work with the students that, we'll be able to take them on some field trips at different points to go to some of the companies that they might become employed at as a group. We also recently took, I got a large bus, and we took about 40 students and staff to a machine trade show. So it was fascinating to see the kind of next generation technology being demonstrated, at the big machine show.
Okay, and that's valuable not just for the participants, but also for the staff and the instructors.
Exactly right. Yeah, I think it kind of reinforces the notion that our students really need to be trainable. Nobody's going to be working on the exact Haas lathe that they had in their CNC class, right? It's probably going to be a more advanced version. Although we did have a company at the trade show donate a $75,000 milling center, to the college. So it's pretty state-of-the-art equipment that our students will then have access to.
That's great.
So the point is, these technical foundation skills, so-called basic skills, right? I mean, to me, they are probably more important than the application of those skills in the particular machine that they're operating. I mean, the machine that they're operating is a great way to integrate what they've learned in the classroom to bring together the reading and the math and the computer skills and blueprint skills and other blueprint reading. So it brings all that together into a practical hands-on learning experience.
So
the whole idea is they're able to continue to learn. That's not the end. That's just the beginning, right? And so it's more a competency in being able to operate a machine. So now they can go on, and they may not even work in metalworking. They might work in food processing. It's a huge segment of manufacturing here in our area. But again, they're computerized packaging equipment. So a lot of the same concepts are still going to apply. So we want our students to be able to access a broader range of specific occupational opportunities. So I think this is quite different from a traditional vocational ed approach, which really focuses on a lot of time on learning a particular machine.
I really like this idea that it's almost an experience of learning how to learn about the use of a new technology or a particular set of job skills. Those skills themselves will be valuable, but also the experience of learning how to learn those skills will be valuable. I like that's a new twist on the topic for me, anyway. You'll notice that I passed a lessons learned slide, just some of the things that you have identified as lessons you've learned. It connects with one of the questions that that I received, and it's from Phyllis Cummins. Thank you, Phyllis, about high school diplomas. In particular, she asked that she's interested in adults age 55 and older, and if you look at the educational level for Hispanics or Latinos, that age group has a high proportion of those with less than a high school education. So how important is this GED attainment, and what connection do you make with their bridge program and GED attainment? Is there a link?
Well, there's a link in the sense that we work with our adult education department to be able to offer a GED class at a time and location that our students would be able to participate.
Okay.
And so they like it because we're bringing them students. We like it because we're able to set something up that our students can really access, and the fact that our students can still obtain a GED in Spanish. It doesn't matter particularly. Maybe there would be a preference in English if possible, but the GED in Spanish is still a high school equivalent certification, still recognized by employers, and so we work with our students to be able to do that. And of course, it's interesting how the whole GED exam now is being changed to make it in the context of work, basically. So there's a whole new GED in English exam that will be administered beginning in January 2014. Just through the next year, it's all going to be implementation, and a lot of online resources available for that. And then they expect 9 to 12 months later to have a version translated into Spanish. And it's going to be a completely online GED test. So again, students were going to need significant computer skills to be able to even do a GED exam.
Okay. Well, we got a comment about your recent comments about students needing to be trainable or learning how to learn.
Sure.
So Peggy Hilden sent a comment saying, I appreciate your comments on students needing to be trainable. It's absolutely true in healthcare as well. We were talking about manufacturing, but clearly it's not only manufacturing in which that expresses itself. So thank you, Peggy, for that.
Good point. Yeah.
We talked a little bit about promoting instructor effectiveness and some of what you need to do. I found particularly interesting this idea that instructors need to see themselves as more than just instructors. Do you want to elaborate on that or any of these other elements of helping instructors be successful?
Sure. And first of all, I want to say these are not original with me, but they were presented as part of the National College Transition Network Conference last week in Providence, Rhode Island. And so, but they're based on research that's been ongoing about what really are the factors that can increase instructor effectiveness. And so professional development being very important, but also they're saying within the first 2 years that the instructor is beginning, it is really the critical time. So we need to front load it, sustain it over time, hands-on, collaborative with other instructors, reflective, etc. This thing about climate for collaboration, I think, is very important. And this has to do not just the professional development, but just the whole environment in which our programs take place within. That we spend a lot of time listening, providing regular feedback, doing the frequent and short visits to classrooms, where we can really, I think, be effective in understanding what's going on and providing the feedback that's relevant. And all of this is also out of an analysis that instructors are really critical to any program's success. I know one evaluation we had of our healthcare program, they said, your instructors are golden. They're golden. Mm-hmm. And so just to understand instructors as a precious asset, I think that really has to be paid attention to and developed. And so part of this is instructors being able to develop some additional skills and additional roles that they can be part of, developing the curriculum and standards, or looking at data for improvements, and of course having the opportunity to network with other instructors, both within their organization and without. So those are some of the elements that were discussed as being important from the research, and saying that it really is different from a high school environment. We are working with adults, and mm-hmm. It really creates I think a little different process in how instructors work with students, the level of respect and independence that they can be allowed, the projects that students can get involved with, et cetera. So.
I like that phrase of creating climate for collaboration, and I'll just mention that I noticed that a great deal of collaboration, particularly between the technical instructor and the ESL instructor, is required for this contextualized curriculum. So I'm assuming that that's at least one area where once you've created that that climate for collaboration, it pays a lot of dividends.
Sure, and that's the great thing about that IBEST approach in the state of Washington is that it's really formalized as part of the process to have that collaboration.
So we've been getting lots of questions throughout. We're running low on time, so we won't get to all of them. I did get a question at in the registration process that I just want to sort of return to, which is that, again, we've focused a lot on English language learners here, but I'm wondering, as far as these principles or process of contextualization, how applicable is this to working with native English speakers who face other basic skills gaps? And are you aware of any, say, analogs or parallels to your own program, but that deal with the native English speakers?
Sure. Yeah, there are some that focus more on people that are individuals that are low literacy, and so obviously the principle still applies that it's important to connect learning with earning. This guy Dale Parnell back in the 90s, wrote the classic book, I think, on this. Why do we need to learn this, right? And also the neglected majority. And this became the basis for tech prep within the high schools, to develop essentially career pathways, right? Focused in particular sectors, connecting the high school with community college, contextualized learning. All those were elements within that. So that was certainly seen to be highly relevant to, native English speakers. And so there are some programs in the United States that have focused on that. I know, for example, there was one in Southwest Arkansas. It was a nursing program. They came up and visited with us and then developed it, their curriculum specific for, the native English speaking population. And it's something that we need to develop more of here as well, even within the Latino communities as the next generation comes through, that are then native English speakers. Right?
Well, on that note, I think we're going to need to wrap up. If we didn't get to your question, I apologize, and we will do our best to follow up with you offline to address unanswered questions. I will attempt to do that. I want to step on the soapbox for just a minute and just say that regardless of where you fit into the workforce development universe, there is likely something that you can do. One of the things that I heard from you, Tom, early is that it's important to have this this approach where, and I'm forgetting the phrase again, where you can enter at any point. There's no place where you can't fit in.
No wrong door.
All doors are open. No wrong door.
Right.
And so for workforce agencies, I just want to encourage you. We've had a lot of focus on high-skilled occupations that are in demand by industry, but you can't just focus on the high-skilled. And if you have entrance criteria for your sector-focused programs and people are not meeting them, I think it's incumbent upon you not to just turn those folks away or refer them to some of the generic developmental education programs, but to think of what's the strategy for helping folks build their basic skills. Unfortunately, there's some good models and a lot of learning out there on that. I think similarly, Tom, you described training providers, training institutions changing the way they're doing to move more in this direction of contextualized, integrated, and supported instruction. And I think, it's clear that, in general, generic developmental education isn't good enough for a lot of participants. So, so I would urge folks who are in that world to think about how basic skills instruction can be contextualized to career pathways that are industry-specific, and how basic skills instruction can be, integrated with those pathways to expand opportunities for folks and what kinds of supports they need to succeed. You can get a chance, Tom, to talk about how employers are partnering with you in this contextualization effort, but employers do have a vested interest in making sure that the skills gaps are addressed and have a role to play in helping, I presume, to support that contextualization and the development of bridge programs. So I would encourage you, if you're an employer that's facing a shortage of employees or employees that are coming to you with skills gaps, to find out who you can partner with to contextualize the training that they're offering. I think another thing that's clear is it's time-consuming to move people up in their basic skills. It's not a short-term proposition. And, I saw courses, Tom, on your pathway that were 16 weeks and 14 weeks to get to another 16-week or 14-week training. That's costly, and it requires collaboration. So I would encourage funders to recognize that it takes time and funding to support these kinds of programs that really do make a huge difference for those who will otherwise, as you more or less be circling in an eddy that has no exit. And that policy can also support this such as the policy in Washington State, the iBest training model, that really has begun to make a huge difference for participants in that state. Tom, you mentioned work that's done in Arkansas, and particularly that Southeast Arkansas training model, which used TANF funds in that state and their investment in the Career Pathways model. So, so as you depart from this session, because we're now over time, do think about what you can do differently in response. I'll mention that we have resources. There are plenty of resources out there that will be of use. And if you don't find a resource that you're looking for, I'd encourage you to contact me. There are plenty more I could have listed on here, as well as links to those. So that will be included in the follow-up to this session. We are having a webinar 2 weeks from today, and it's on another topic that's been identified as important to sector initiatives. That is how to partner effectively. And so I just want to say you should have gotten an invitation to that already, but if not, it'll be included in the email follow-up. And I hope you'll join us for that session. I mentioned that we had changed some of how we did things, for this webinar. We'd like to hear how that worked for you. So please, as you're leaving the webinar, take 30 seconds or less. It really can be that short to let us know how it worked for you, or what else we can do differently in the future to improve our webinars. And finally, thank you for participating today. If you have more questions, I am always reachable with follow-up, and really eager to hear from you about what you're doing, as well as how we can be of help to you in what you're doing. So there's my contact information. Tom, thank you so much for sharing your incredible expertise. And if you're out there listening now, I'd ask you to join me in thanking Tom by clicking on that hand. We'll take a lesson from the 99 percenters. Click on that hand icon, raise your hands. I don't think we have a wiggle your hands capacity, but really, Tom, thank you so much. It's just really great to be able to dig in like we have on this session.
Oh, well, thank you.
And again, thank you all for participating. We hope these webinars are of use. That's why we do them, and we hope to see you on future webinars. So until next time, all the best, and take care. As we sign off, I'll note someone has asked whether folks will get copies of the slides. I just want to reiterate, we will send a follow-up email to this session with links to the recording and to the slideshows, as well as to materials that were referenced. So if you heard of something that was referenced that you particularly want to help finding, let us know, and we will send it along. But look for that in your inbox before Thanksgiving. And have a great and happy and safe Thanksgiving, everyone.